Hey there, thanks for joining me. Today I'm working large, and this is actually Saunders Waterford watercolour paper which I've attached to this board. It's actually £200, so it's a heavier weight paper, and it's not, so it's got a little bit of a rough surface. And I'm going to make some initial lines with this Posca silver pen. And this is in practice for a couple of abstracts that I'm actually commissioned to do. So I've chosen the colours according to what I want to do for those. And I'm using the acrylic inks, which I will list in the description for you. And we're just going to go some freestyle. So this actually just gives me a bit of a base outline, just an idea of what it is that I want to achieve, and it's just good. It's easier than trying to do something very random just to start with. Now it's completely dry, they don't take very long to dry, so I'm using an inch brush, a watercolour brush actually, just to put some clean water in some various places on this paper. Now because it's a slightly heavier weight, it will take quite a bit of water and it won't buckle. It will cockle a little bit as we work on it, but it will dry and it will go flat. So I can spray some water about, and then we can drop some inks in here. Now I'm starting with this transparent burnt umber, which is a lovely earthy brown, and as you can see it's spreading nicely into the water that I've just placed on, and it's spreading itself out, but I'm going to help it a little bit more. I want it to move quite a bit. I want some places where it's quite a large area of the colour. So we'll spray that about and get it to move. And now I'm using one of my favourite silicone spatulas to pour some of that lovely luscious ink into different shapes, pushing it along. The paper is quite robust, which means it's quite strong. You can actually work on it quite well. Obviously this is made for watercolour paints, but because we're using inks, this works just the same. It's absolutely fine. The only difference is that once the inks are dry, they are permanent. We can work on top of them. I'm going to take that little bit out. I don't like that. I'm going to soften that out. You see how easy it is just to remove. There we go. Bob it with a little bit of kitchen towel, and then we'll just keep moving this beautiful ink around. It does dry quite quickly, so the thing you have to do with this is to actually move quite fast, know what you're going to do, and then just go for it. I'm dropping it in one of the really pretty Dale Rowney pearlescent inks. This is a very pale green. Now because it's pearlescent, it has flakes in it of mica which stop it moving quite as quickly as the inks that don't have it. You can see it's actually staying in place quite sort of strongly, but that's okay. We can help move it about, and again with using a spatula we could push it across this the brown ink which is still moist, and so it's taking some of that colour with it, and we'll move that little bit of green and sort of along those silver lines that I've actually drawn there, and we'll mix the two together there. It's really a question of push, pull, play about, and see what you feel comfortable with. The great thing with acrylics is, as I said, once it's dry, you can, if you don't like an area, just go over with some white paint and get rid of it. We'll soften that little bit of green out there. I'm just using a round watercolour brush just to apply some water and soften those edges. And now I'm actually dotting in some white acrylic ink. I love white acrylic ink. It softens, it highlights, it adds interest, and it merges with the colours. Now I'm using my round-nosed spatula, my palette knife here, just again to push out some shapes. Whatever you've got to hand, you can use palette knives, you can use old credit cards, you could use anything that's just got a flat dull blade. And now this is a beautiful colour. This is one of my favourites. This is Indigo. Again, just using the pipette that it comes with and dropping it along, drawing with it, and where it's hitting those damp areas you can see it's starting to bleed. Where it's in the dry areas it stays a crisp line. Beautiful, best of both worlds. I'm just taking it upwards a little bit just to add a little form, a little bit of interest. Oh, now you see I've dropped a large area there, but it doesn't matter, we'll incorporate it. It obviously wants to be there. Okay, so wet the brush again and just move that. It's a bit solid, that blob, so we'll soften that out. And I'm picking some of that up actually on the brush and just using it like a paint. So the inks are very versatile, really good for using for lots of different ways. Now these pen sprays are really helpful because they're not as wide as the larger spray bottles, a bit more directable. As you can see, I'm just sort of tipping it around. You can see where the wet ink's shining, and just blow it. Excuse the top of my head. It's like being a kid when you used to do it with blowing through a straw. But you can see now I'm using another palette knife. This is a small metal one with a smaller end, and I'm pushing it around. It's almost scooping the ink and moving it. Just pushing it into the areas I want it to be. And then we can still soften it, still push it around with the water. Okay, so this is dried, and you can see these are the reference fabrics that I'm working for. These are the sorts of colours that are in this particular fabric. So I'm bringing these out, but I want to soften out some of the blue with some of this pearlescent blue now. So I'm doing exactly the same, just wetting an area, plenty of water. Because this is pearlescent, light with the green is not going to flow quite as well, so I can afford to use quite a bit of water here. And as you can see, even going over the top of the inks that are dry, it won't move it. Such a pretty blue. It's like a sea blue on a nice day somehow. It's very pretty. It just adds a little bit of warmth to these other colours. I'm just dotting it into a few areas that I think we can spread it around. Move my sleeve out of the way. I've been known to drag my sleeve through inks and paints and get that moving. Lovely. And pull some of that colour down. Just use that little palette knife again. Push it around. It's almost like it's just spreading it really. Pushing it, spreading it. I'm just going to soften that area. I want to leave that little bit white, so don't be afraid to lift out. Soften with a bit more water. Okay. Just pushing that colour in. If it doesn't move, just give it a bit of a spray. What you probably can't actually see from where you are is the surface of the paper, with it having a little bit of texture, a little bit of tooth. It's very sort of textured. It really is quite effective. I'll try and show it to you later on. Now I'm dropping in a little bit of this other ink, which I don't want to use too much of. I only want a little bit, and it is transparent raw sienna, because I just want a little bit of more golden colour. And I know that it's actually going to mix with this wet blue, the pearlescent, and create a sort of soft yellowy green. Like I say, I'm just going to very judiciously place it in areas just to give that little bit of warmth. Drop it in. If you drop in a little bit and you want to add more, it's much easier than dropping in too much and then trying to lift it out, especially if it's started to dry. Okay. And again, just a little bit of softening. You can lift it out as well. Use a wet brush and pick it off and just wipe it into a piece of kitchen roll or tissue. So you can lift it out just like you would with watercolours. Okay, now I'm going back in with that silver pen that I had originally. I just want to add a few more little lines of interest. Now that we've got a sort of idea of the shapes, I'm going across some of the inks that's already dry. Just where I feel I would like to put extra lines. Just because we've put them in at the beginning doesn't mean we can't put further lines in as we go along, once we've got an idea of what it is we want to do. And now I'm going in with this beautiful metallic bronze, and I'm using it to draw just a few more lines, add a little bit more depth, sort of outline some of the shapes almost. It's a very rich brown, it's a beautiful colour, and it does have that lovely shimmer of a pearlescence. A little bit of highlight there. You can add obviously as much or as little of any of these colours as you wish. I'm trying to keep this painting loose, quite open, very abstract, so it's not becoming a landscape or anything particularly botanical. It is just really, really abstract, but I love this sense of adventuring with the inks, seeing what they do. As you can see, I can pull this ink around with the wet brush, soften it, blend it, and move it into different areas. So versatile. There we go, join those lines. And now I'm just going to go in with a few more drops of the white, just to place next to some of those darker areas to add extra highlight. Remember, next to white you need a dark to make it really pop. Okay, I think that's effective. A nice bit next to that indigo blue. Beautiful. So I'll just help that move around a little bit again, just using that smaller metal palette knife across the surface of that brown. The brown is completely dry, so it's just adding an extra layer, a little bit more opaque. And I'm just going back in with that soft green again, just in a few little areas, just to add a few little bits, a few more lines, a few more bits of detail. Okay, and here's the finished piece. I've let it dry, I haven't added anything else to it, and you can see when I go over it with the video for you, there's areas of white, there's areas of gentle colour. You can see the shimmer of the pearlescent colours, the inks on top of the non-pearlescent, just adding layers of interest and colour. I really hope this will inspire you to have a go yourself using watercolour paper and acrylic inks, and I hope that you will join me for more videos very soon. Please get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you for joining me once more. Keep painting, stay safe, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.